My parents always favored my younger brother and treated me like I didn't exist. I clawed my way out of poverty, bought a house, and finally found peace, until they showed up demanding I give it to him, because I don't have a family. I refused. What happened next shocked the entire family. You ever get the feeling that your entire life was designed for someone else's convenience? Like you were born into the world not to be loved, but to absorb everyone else's anger, to carry the blame, the shame, the weight of a family that needed a villain and decided it would be you? Yeah, that was me. I'm 33 now, but some scars don't care how old you are. I grew up in a weather-beaten two-story house in upstate New York, the kind of place with a peeling white fence and a front yard my mom obsessively manicured just so the neighbors wouldn't ask questions. From the outside, we looked like a postcard. Inside, it was a war zone dressed in silence. One wrong look, one missed chore, one A- instead of an A. And suddenly, I was the ungrateful son. I was the crash test dummy for their disappointments. Every word I spoke felt like a trigger. Every breath I took, an inconvenience. My little brother, Evan, he was the golden one. 2 years younger, a constant screw-up, but you'd think he walked on water the way my parents praised him. He once got a participation trophy for T-ball, and they threw him a party. I brought home straight A's and got told to take the trash out. I remember once I made honor roll 3 semesters in a row. My mom glanced at the certificate and said, "Don't get cocky, it won't last." Evan, on the other hand, could do no wrong. He got detention for fighting. Boys will be boys. He wrecked Dad's truck joyriding at 16. Well, at least he's not doing drugs. He dropped out of college after 1 semester. He just needs time to find his path. Meanwhile, I was working full-time and taking night classes, and they still asked me why I wasn't doing more with my life. The physical stuff was worse when I was younger. Not every day, but enough to make me flinch when someone raises their voice. My dad had a heavy hand and a short fuse. Evan never got hit, not once. But me? If I talked back, if I cried, if I asked why, I'd get the belt, or the back of his hand, or whatever was close enough. My mom would always say, "You know how your father gets. Why do you push him?" By high school, I stopped talking much. I'd eat meals in silence, go to school early, stay late. I got a job bagging groceries just to have an excuse to stay out of the house. I saved every dime. Didn't go to prom, didn't date, just studied and worked and dreamed of escape. And I did escape. The second I turned 18, I moved out. No fanfare, no tears. I packed my bags the night before and left before sunrise. Slept on a friend's couch, worked 2 jobs, eventually scraped my way into a community college, and never looked back. I kept contact minimal. Birthday texts, maybe a holiday dinner every couple of years. But I never stayed long. I couldn't. Every visit felt like swallowing poison, smiling through gritted teeth while my mom asked if I was still single, and my dad bragged about Evan's latest endeavor, which was always some half-baked business scheme or new girlfriend with a mysterious past. Then the pandemic hit. I was living in a rented condo with a roommate who bailed the second things got tight. Lost my job, couldn't pay rent. My savings dwindled fast and unemployment barely kept me fed. I tried to stay afloat, gig jobs, selling old furniture, even donating plasma a few times just to scrape by. When the lease ran out, I had nowhere to go. I didn't even consider asking my parents. I knew the answer already. "We don't have space. Evan and the kids are living with us now. You should have saved better." So I got desperate, found a used camper on Craigslist, old but functional, and parked it at a rundown campground on the edge of town. That's where I lived for nearly 10 months, through snow, rain, blistering heat. The first night, I cried myself to sleep, curled up with a blanket that didn't smell like home because I didn't have a home. But I survived. It started small. I got a job at a hardware store. Long hours, crap pay, but it was something. I kept my head down, worked overtime, volunteered for shifts no one wanted, saved every penny. Eventually, I got promoted to assistant manager, started picking up odd carpentry gigs on the side, learned how to fix things with my hands. There was a strange comfort in it, taking something broken and making it whole again. Maybe because no one ever did that for me. By the time the next year rolled around, I'd managed to get my credit in shape and had a decent chunk in savings. I started looking at small fixer-uppers, found one at the edge of town, a little 2-bedroom house with peeling paint and a sagging porch, but the bones were good. The day I got the keys, I sat in the driveway for a long time, just staring. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine, and no one could take it. No one could yell at me or make me feel like I didn't belong. I walked inside, stood in the empty living room, and let the silence wrap around me like a blanket. I dropped my bag on the floor and whispered, "I'm home." Then I laughed. It sounded stupid, maybe even crazy, but I laughed until I cried. I started fixing it up, one project at a time. Painted the walls, repaired the roof, installed a second-hand washer and dryer. Made mistakes, sure, but each one taught me something. There was a kind of therapy in the rhythm of sanding, painting, hammering, and slowly it stopped feeling like a project and started feeling like a sanctuary. That camper? I parked it in the backyard. Couldn't bring myself to sell it. It had sheltered me when I had nothing, and that meant something. I'd sit in it sometimes on quiet nights, just to remind myself how far I'd come. I didn't tell my family about the house. I figured they didn't deserve to know, but word travels in small towns, and it wasn't long before my mom called. "I heard you bought a place," she said, voice laced with surprise like I'd done something unnatural. "Why didn't you tell us?" I bit my tongue. "Been busy." "Well, Evan and Krista could really use a house," she said casually. "You know how crowded it is here with the kids." That was the first crack. I should have seen it coming, but for a while things were quiet. I stayed focused, on work, on rebuilding, on healing. I'd host a few friends now and then, got to know the neighbors, sat on my porch in the evenings with a beer, watching the sky change colors and thinking, maybe this is it. Maybe I made it. Then one afternoon I got a text from Evan. "Hey man, heard about the house. Mind if we swing by?" I didn't answer right away, but curiosity, or maybe weakness, got the better of me. I said yes. Regret followed like clockwork. They showed up the next day, Evan, Krista, and their 4 kids. I barely recognized the youngest. Evan looked the same, smug, confident, wearing a hoodie 3 sizes too expensive for someone who hadn't held a job in over a year. Krista gave me a half hug and sniffed like she smelled something sour. "Cute place," she said, glancing around like a realtor. "Needs work." I clenched my jaw. "It's a work in progress." They stayed for hours, let the kids run wild, opened my fridge without asking. Krista even sat on my couch and propped her feet up like she owned the place. Evan walked room to room, nodding slowly like he was mentally rearranging the furniture. I didn't know what they wanted yet, but I felt it in my bones, and I was right. That night after they left, I found a note tucked into my mailbox, in Krista's handwriting. "We're really happy for you. The house is beautiful. Just think, if you lived in the camper, you'd have so much more peace and quiet. Love, Kay." I stared at it for a long time, then crumpled it and threw it in the trash. I wish I could say that was the end of it, but it was only the beginning. You ever feel the ground shift under your feet, but it takes a minute to realize you're standing on a fault line? That was me, standing in the kitchen of the house I fought like hell to afford, staring out the window as Evan's minivan rolled up for the 3rd time that week. His kids spilled out before the engine even stopped, tearing across my lawn like it was a public park. Krista emerged next, already mid-conversation with someone on speakerphone, not even glancing toward the front door. Evan gave me that familiar smug half-smile as he walked up the steps. "Hey bro, got a minute?" It wasn't a question. I didn't want to let them in. Everything in me said don't. But some combination of shock, habit, and sheer disbelief opened the door anyway. "Just a quick chat," he said, stepping inside without waiting. "We've been thinking, this house is way too much for one guy. And with the new baby and all, well, we thought maybe it's time we helped each other out." Krista chimed in like we were all in on the same inside joke. "Yeah, it's just silly for you to have all this space and live alone when we're crammed like sardines at mom and dad's." I stood frozen. "You want to move in?" Evan looked around like he'd already claimed the place. "Just makes sense. You've got 2 bedrooms. We'd take the master, obviously. Kids can bunk in the other. You could always crash in the camper. You used to live there, right? You're used to it." My laugh came out sharper than I intended. "You're not serious." Krista crossed her arms. "You don't have a family. You don't need all this." That's when the blood drained from my face. I hadn't heard it spoken so plainly before. Like my life, my peace, my home, was negotiable, disposable. I didn't answer. I just opened the door and stood aside. "Out," Krista blinked. "Excuse me?" I said out, now. They didn't budge. Evan stepped toward me, tone suddenly colder. "You don't get it, man. This isn't just about you. We're trying to give our kids a decent life. You know how hard it's been for us." "Yeah," I snapped, "and I know how you treat people when they try to help you." The next morning, things escalated. I came home from work to find a moving truck idling at the curb. My front door was wide open. Boxes littered the hallway. Evan's voice echoed from the kitchen. "You can put the crib in that room," he shouted to someone unseen. I stormed inside. What the hell is going on? Krista stood at the sink, wiping down counters that didn't need wiping. We figured we'd save you the trouble. Thought you'd come around. I stared in disbelief. You broke into my house. Evan appeared holding a framed photo from my bedroom. Technically, the lock was busted. You should really get that fixed. I changed the locks last week. Yeah, we noticed, Krista said smugly. So we called a locksmith. I could feel my pulse pounding behind my eyes. I pulled out my phone and dialed. Evan scoffed. Seriously? You're calling the cops? I locked eyes with him. Get out. Now, or explain to the officer why you think you're entitled to a house that isn't yours. He didn't move. You wouldn't. We're family. That word again. That manipulation. That excuse for every awful thing they'd ever done. But this time, I didn't flinch. When the police arrived, I met them on the porch and calmly explained the situation. Evan tried to play the victim. Claimed I had promised to let them stay. That we had a verbal agreement. Krista even pulled out a printed rental agreement with my forged signature. The ink was barely dry. The officer looked between us, then back at me. You own this house? He asked. Yes, I have the deed, ID, and video footage from my security cam. Evan's face blanched. Krista started yelling, something about rights and children, but the officer shut it down fast. Ma'am, if you don't leave voluntarily, we'll have to remove you. 10 minutes later, they were standing at the curb beside their minivan, humiliated, fuming. Krista shouted something about how she'd sue me for emotional distress. Evan just stared, as if finally realizing I wasn't the same scared older brother who used to sleep with his door barricaded. I watched them drive off, my hands shaking. Not from fear, but from something I hadn't felt in a long time. Power. The fallout started immediately. My parents called that night. I let it go to voicemail. First, it was my mom. How could you do this to your brother? You have no idea what kind of pressure he's under. Then my dad. We raised you better than this. Family comes first. I listened to both messages while sitting on the porch steps, the night air thick around me. Then I deleted them. 3 days later, a certified letter arrived. My full name typed neatly on the envelope. Inside was a legal-looking document, laughably fake, claiming my parents were transferring family property rights to Evan under some bogus clause they'd made up. There was even a fake notary stamp. I brought it to a lawyer friend. He laughed for 5 full minutes, then offered to help me file a cease and desist. We did. I didn't hear from them again for a week. Then came the ambush. I got home late from work to find a familiar car in the driveway, my parents' old blue sedan. I parked out front and sat in the cab for a moment, just watching. The lights were on inside. Shadows moved behind the curtains. I didn't even have to guess. I called the police before I went in. When the officers escorted them out, my mother was crying, clinging to a folder of family photos like a shield. My father didn't say a word. Evan was red-faced, arguing with one of the officers about his rights as a tenant, even though he'd never paid a cent to be there. Krista filmed the whole thing on her phone, yelling about viral injustice. Once they were gone, I finally walked inside. They'd rearranged furniture, opened boxes. Evan had even left a toothbrush in the bathroom. I sat on the edge of my bed and let the silence settle again. But it wasn't the silence of before. This time it felt earned. The confrontation happened that weekend. They showed up again, this time with my Uncle Peter and Cousin Tara, relatives I actually respected, who clearly had no idea what was going on. I stood on my porch while they approached, bracing myself for another storm. But it wasn't what I expected. Peter hugged me, heard some rumors, thought we'd ask you first. So I told them everything. The lies, the break-in, the forged documents, the guilt trips, the years of favoritism, neglect, and abuse. I didn't raise my voice. I just told the truth. By the end, Tara was shaking her head. Jesus, I had no idea it was that bad. Peter just looked tired. Neither did we. The next day, my phone lit up with messages from cousins, old family friends, even a few aunts who'd once called me too sensitive. People who had heard the real story. People who believed me. My mother called again. This time I answered. I just want to talk, she said softly. I did, I replied. For 30 years. You just never listened. She started crying again, but I didn't comfort her. I'm done, I said. I'm done being the scapegoat. The backup plan, the doormat. You raised me to believe I was worthless. I'm not. There was silence on the other end. Then a click. I haven't heard from her since. That night, I walked out to the camper. Sat on the little bench where I used to sleep. It still smelled faintly of mildew and old pine. I looked around and remembered the cold nights, the hunger, the shame. And then I looked through the window at my house, and I smiled. They tried to take everything, again. But this time, I had something they couldn't touch. Boundaries, self-respect, a locked front door, and the courage to say no. And that was worth more than any apology they'd never give. Funny how quickly the truth travels when it's finally spoken out loud. After the last confrontation, after Evan and Krista were escorted off my property with their fake lease and crocodile tears, I figured that was the end. I thought they'd go dark, lick their wounds, maybe nurse a new narrative about how I was some greedy recluse who turned his back on family. But what I didn't count on was this. People were tired of their lies too. Within days of telling Uncle Peter and my cousin Tara what had really happened, about the break-in, the forged documents, and the years of emotional abuse, they started telling others. Not out of malice, but out of clarity. Out of this almost reverent disbelief that something so rotten had gone unseen for so long. And once it started, it spread like wildfire. At first it was texts, from cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. "Hey, I had no idea things were like that. I'm sorry. We always wondered why you stopped coming around. Now it makes sense. If you ever want to grab lunch, it's on me. No strings." Then came the phone calls. A few tearful, a few angry, not at me, but at the people who had painted me as the problem for so long. One cousin, Jenna, who used to babysit Evan and me, called from across the country. She remembered things, little details I thought I'd imagine. How your mom always made you do dishes after every family dinner while Evan played video games. How your dad used to call you a mistake when he drank too much. How once you got a nosebleed and your mom told you to stop being dramatic because Evan was trying to nap. "I didn't speak up back then," she whispered, "and I'm sorry for that." It was like someone had removed a blindfold I didn't even know the family was wearing. People who used to parrot my parents' lines about me being cold, difficult, or ungrateful were now seeing through the fog. And as Christmas approached, something I never expected started happening. They asked to come to my house. For once, I wasn't the afterthought or the pity invite. They wanted my space, my tree, my kitchen, my energy. Tara offered to bring wine and help decorate. Uncle Peter volunteered to play Santa for the kids. Cousin Jenna said she'd fly in if she could get the time off work. I said yes, because for the first time in my life, I wanted to be surrounded by family. Just not all of them. I didn't extend invites to my parents, or to Evan and Krista, not out of spite, but out of peace. I'd had enough chaos, enough guilt, enough manipulations to last me a lifetime. This holiday, I wanted real laughter, honest smiles, no backhanded comments, no side-eye judgments. Just good people sharing food and warmth under one roof. My roof. The night before Christmas Eve, I stood outside in the cold, stringing up lights along the porch. The wind bit through my coat, but I didn't care. My hands were frozen, but my chest was warm. The camper sat in the backyard, still and silent. I glanced at it and gave it a nod, like an old friend I hadn't forgotten. Then I turned back to the house, flipped the switch, and watched it come alive. Warm yellow lights wrapped around the pillars. A wreath hung on the door. Inside, the scent of cinnamon candles and pine filled the air. Christmas Eve came, and so did the people. Uncle Peter arrived first, dressed like Santa, just like he promised. He dropped a massive tray of baked ziti on my counter and clapped me on the back with a grin. "Smells like a damn Hallmark movie in here." Tara came next with her wife and their toddler, who immediately latched onto the tree like it was a jungle gym. Cousins filtered in one by one, arms full of cookies, gifts, and hugs. My small living room buzzed with life, cheeks flushed, voices overlapping, laughter spilling through the air like snowfall. Someone put on music, someone else poured wine, and I stood in the kitchen just watching, heart full in a way I'd never felt before. Then the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone else. I opened the door and there they were. My parents, Evan, Krista, the whole circus. My mother wore pearls and a smile as thin as tracing paper. My father stood stiff behind her, hands in his coat pockets. Krista held the baby like a shield. Evan looked smug, like he'd been waiting for this moment. "We came to make amends," my mom said, as if this were some stage play and she'd rehearsed the line in front of a mirror. I didn't say anything, just stood there, the warmth of the party behind me and the cold creeping in around their feet. "Can we come in?" she asked, stepping forward. Before I could answer, Tara appeared at my side. "No," my mom blinked. "I wasn't talking to you." "I don't care," Tara said, voice calm but steely. "You're not welcome here." My dad's jaw twitched. "This is still our family." Peter joined us, arms crossed. "You don't get to define that anymore." One by one, others gathered near the door. Cousins, nieces, nephews, all watching. Krista gave a dramatic sigh. So this is the new family, huh? Bunch of fake loyalty and performative forgiveness? You forged a lease, I said flatly. You tried to steal my house. And you called the cops on us, Evan shot back. Like we were criminals. You are, Tara muttered. Enough. I stepped outside, letting the door close gently behind me. This isn't about one fight. It's about a lifetime of choices. You made yours. You chose to hurt me, lie about me, treat me like a backup plan, and now you want a seat at my table? My mom's eyes filled with tears. We're still your parents. And I'm still your son, I said. But that didn't stop you from siding with Evan every time he burned me to the ground. The wind whipped through us, silent but sharp. Go home, I said. Whatever home you have left. My father stared at me, eyes hard. But he didn't say a word. My mother opened her mouth, then shut it. Krista scoffed. Evan looked like he wanted to argue, but something in my face must have stopped him. They turned, walked down the steps, and for the first time in my life, I didn't watch them leave with regret. I turned around and opened the door. Inside, my family, the real one, waited with quiet support. Peter handed me a glass of wine. Tara put a hand on my shoulder. You okay? She asked. I nodded. Yeah, I am. We toasted that night, to growth, to peace, to boundaries and bravery in chosen families. Later, when the fire had burned low and the kids had finally crashed on the couch, I stepped outside again. The porch was quiet. The lights still glowed. And for the first time in 33 years, I didn't feel like a ghost in my own story. I felt home. There's a kind of silence that used to scare me, the kind that crept in after an argument or lingered too long in my childhood bedroom. The kind that felt like judgment, accusation, loneliness in its purest form. But now, silence feels like something I earned. It's been 6 months since that Christmas Eve ambush, since I stood on my porch and told my parents, my brother, and the woman who tried to move into my house behind my back that they were no longer welcome in my life. Since I closed the door, turned around, and really saw, the people who chose to stand by me. These days, my house doesn't feel like a battleground. It feels like mine, like the sanctuary it was always supposed to be. The echo of their voices is gone, replaced by better sounds. Music from the kitchen radio, dice clattering across the coffee table during poker night, the sizzle of something good cooking on the stove, or just the occasional creak of settling wood while I read in bed. I've made this place home in every sense of the word. I replaced the broken porch swing with a heavy cedar one I built myself. Got a fire pit out back, strung with warm patio lights that come on at dusk. Sometimes I sit out there with a drink and just breathe, watching the flames dance, wondering if that broken kid who once slept in a camper would believe the life I have now. Speaking of the camper, it's still here. I couldn't get rid of it. I thought about it once. Put it up on a resale site, had a guy come look at it. He poked around, tapped the sides, said it needed more work than it was worth. But when he left, I sat inside for a minute. It still smelled like rain and old coffee. Still had the blanket I'd used that first winter, folded neatly on the bench. I remembered crying into that blanket, shaking from cold and from shame, thinking I'd never get out. Now I see it differently. It wasn't a coffin, it was a cocoon. So I kept it, cleaned it out, fixed the latch on the door, resealed the windows. I even put a little solar panel on the roof. It's parked in the backyard, tucked under an old oak tree. Sometimes I sit in there with a book or just nap on rainy days. It reminds me of where I started and how far I've come. I think that's why I don't feel bitter. What happened with my family? Yeah, it was cruel. It was manipulative. It cut deep in ways that still bleed sometimes if I think about it too long. But it also gave me clarity. It forced me to draw a line, to stop begging for scraps of affection from people who only ever fed me guilt. And once I did that, once I said enough, the rest of my life opened up. Turns out peace isn't quiet because there's nothing happening. It's quiet because nothing bad is happening. It's a lack of dread, a stillness without fear, and that stillness is full of possibility. The other night, Tara came by with her wife and their toddler, Lily. We grilled in the backyard, sat around the fire pit, let Lily chase moths and giggle like she owned the world. When the stars came out, Tara turned to me and said, "You know, this place feels like it's always been meant for people to heal." And that hit me hard, because it's true. This house, these walls, this porch, this yard, it's not just a home. It's a promise to myself that I'll never go back to hiding who I am, that I won't shrink myself for anyone, that I won't mistake blood for love ever again. I'm not hiding anymore. I've been thinking about dating again. Nothing serious yet, but I updated my profile. Even went on a couple of coffee dates. It feels strange, in a good way, to let someone new see me, really see me, not the broken version, not the apologetic one. Just me. I also host poker nights now, once a month. Friends from work, a few cousins, neighbors. We sit around the table, talk trash, swap stories, and laugh till our sides hurt. There's no tension, no eggshells, just good people and good snacks. And I'm planning a camping trip this fall. A real one. I've never done that before. Not for fun anyway. I always associated sleeping outdoors with necessity, with failure. But now, I think I'm ready to reclaim it. A couple of us are scouting locations already. I'm even thinking of taking the camper if it'll make the journey. Feels full circle, doesn't it? Last week, I walked through the house barefoot, holding a mug of coffee, watching the morning light pour across the floorboards. The quiet hum of the fridge, birds outside, a gentle breeze nudging the curtains. And I thought to myself, this is what peace looks like. It's not flashy. It's not loud. It's not about proving anything to anyone. It's about standing in your own skin and finally feeling comfortable there. My parents haven't reached out again, neither has Evan, and I don't expect they will. Maybe they finally got the message, or maybe they're still playing the victim in someone else's living room. I don't care. I stopped needing their approval a long time ago. What I need now is this: my little garden, the sound of laughter from the living room, the occasional chaos of a toddler throwing Legos down the hallway, a fridge full of food, a bed that smells like lavender and clean sheets, friends who ask how I'm doing and mean it, and maybe someday soon, someone to share it all with. But even if not, I'll be okay, because I've already built something no one can take from me. I built myself, from the ashes, from the silence, from the years of being told I was nothing. If you made it this far, thanks for riding with me. If you love real, messy, emotional stories like this, go ahead and hit subscribe. There's always another confession waiting in the backseat.